Tim Fitzgerald, our guest, GoPowerCat.com, his publication. Long time. How many years now, Fitz, have you been involved in coverage of Kansas State athletics?
Well, I came full-time to the beat in 95, so I guess technically this is season 30. Holy crap.
That's a long time. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
In those 30 years, has there been, I don't know how to quite word this, but has there been a setback or a more disappointing result or a head-scratcher like Saturday night?
Maybe you can go back to, 2012 at Baylor when they fell apart with, a trip to the national championship possibly going. I mean, that had more stakes, but I haven't seen momentum flip and go against Kansas State like that in a very long time. They kind of did it to Oklahoma State a couple years ago in Manhattan with 45-0, but sometimes it just happens. And boy, that thing spun out of control in just a few minutes for Kansas State and went from a very winnable game to just an uphill battle that they didn't seem want to fight.
Can this, I guess the overall question is, we know now that it probably been several years since one loss really damaged your national championship hopes. We know that's not the case now. So what does K-State have to do, big picture-wise, to get back on that track potentially towards a Big 12 title game appearance? And can they take this show on the road and perform well in the Big 12?
Jeff, you nailed it. That's going to be the question. I mean, they struggled at Tulane, and you got Oklahoma State this weekend. You move into your off week, so you kind of get, that 5-game moment to recoup. But then you go to Boulder and Morgantown in back-to-back weeks, and if you're better than both of those teams, but I still think they're better than BYU, but they certainly weren't on that night. So you have to approach this as a business trip, get out there and take care of business, and they just haven't done that. And that might be partially because they've got some young kids and young guys in key places, and this is really their first opportunity. But boy, it's not like a Chris Kleiman team doesn't usually drop an early game. He's never gone 4-0 from what I think. And go back 2 years ago when they had a stinky loss, what we thought was at the time, to Tulane at home, and they went down to Oklahoma and won. So it hasn't necessarily been a reflection of who this team is overall. But we're going to find out a lot more about this football team on Saturday against OSU.
Tim Fitzgerald, our frequent guest, with us on a Monday as we break down K-State's 38-9 loss to BYU. We were really hoping for a battle of unbeatens coming up Saturday in Manhattan between Oklahoma State and K-State. That's not going to happen. Oklahoma State also lost to Utah on Saturday. So there's a prevailing sentiment out here that Coach Kleiman is not turning loose Avery Johnson, who's still a very young quarterback, relatively inexperienced. How do you break all that down? Is he guilty of maybe keeping the reins too tight? What do you think is in the offing? I think most of us who are aware of Avery and watched him at the high school level, which is not Big 12 level football, let me make that clear. But he has so much pizzazz, and I don't know that we're seeing pizzazz, are we?
No, we're not. I mean, even when he runs the ball, he doesn't quite seem to be himself. But I don't think it's from Kleiman. I asked him a couple weeks ago about it. I said, Avery's never been told by the coaches not to run. And but I think in his mind is I can't get hurt because there is a drop-off for K-State that's pretty significant from 1 to 2. Keep in mind, every scholarship player from last year's team left because of him, so they had to rebuild that room. And the main backup is a former walk-on that's now on scholarship, and Jacob Knuth, who looks good, but he's not Avery Johnson. And what I saw from him on Saturday, his second interception, he steps up, the pocket breaks open, he's got an opportunity to run and pick up the first down. He probably could have ran for about 20 yards and slid. Instead, he decides to throw the ball and throws it right to a BYU player. And I think that one jumped out at me the most, that it feels like someone's in his ears telling him you got to prove you can pass the ball if you want to go to the NFL. Well, I mean, Lamar Jackson has overcome that. He was known as a runner and has proven himself, and I think Avery can follow the same suit. Just play your game, and the passing yards will come.
I'll take the coaches saying that he's not been told not to run at face value, and there was continuity. Connor Riley was there last year, of course, but if it had been Colin Klein as offensive coordinator, not only I guess in the bowl game last year, but of course this season, would Avery look different? Would his play be different than what it is so far?
Great question, and I honestly don't know because I remember talking to Colin about him. And he said, yeah, he's no way I'm going to have him run like the ball like I did. He's not big enough to take that beating, and I agree with that. But I think you got to keep that dimension of run in this offense to make it really effective. BYU was focused on not letting him run, and he still was able to run. But I think his best opportunities are going to be when things just flat open up and he can take off. So, the thing about Colin Klein, K-Staters, like if he was here, look at what he's doing at A&M. He's struggling. They're not putting up a lot of points. And sometimes a new coordinator just has to settle in a little bit and kind of learn what's around him and learn what works. And I think that Connor Riley's going through the same growth process as Colin is now coaching for an SEC team.
Tim Fitzgerald, our guest, GoPowerCat.com, his publication. BYU put up 38 points, including 31 in the second and third quarters when that game just went on its head, but didn't do a whole lot yardage-wise. Back to K-State's offense for a second. Do you like this receiving core? How much upside is there in that unit?
I think there's been some disappointment with them. But we saw Jace Brown and Keegan Johnson come up with some big catches, and there was a obvious drop for first down by Jaden Jackson. Dante Cephas hasn't proven reliable. I think they need to reassess who they're putting on the field. And, just the best athlete isn't necessarily the best player. Because I also think another issue with Avery's running is he's not getting some of the downfield blocks that he needs. The guys are just kind of giving up on plays. So, I hope they reevaluate who they're putting on the field at receiver because I'll tell you this. I've said this on our podcast. Ty Bowman may not be the athlete of those other two guys I mentioned, but he's a pretty good athlete. He's 6'5", and he's going to do things right. I know he's going to throw the blocks and run the right patterns because that's who Ty is, and I'd give him a shot at this point. I don't care what happens in practice. If the guys aren't doing it in the game, that's really what happens and what counts the most.
We were talking last week about, K-State, Oklahoma State. At that point, looked like maybe the best game the Big 12 had to offer all year, or one of them at least, arguably that. So which of these teams can least afford a second loss?
Probably Oklahoma State. I think they got some more challenges, maybe steeper than K-State. I don't know. I haven't really looked at their schedule. But they're in trouble. K-State hasn't carved out its identity because it's got a new quarterback, and they need to figure out what exactly they're going to do. And honestly, going back to what we started with, I don't think the coaches are doing the right stuff right now. Oklahoma State has a proven line, a proven quarterback, and what we thought would be the best running back in college football. And they can't run the damn ball. And so I think that's a sign of bigger problems there at Oklahoma State than what K-State is messing around with because K-State runs the ball well. They even ran it well. At BYU, they had 120 some more yards than the Cougars. Just they gave up 2 non-offensive touchdowns and 2 short field touchdowns. And there you go. You got blown out because of that.
Visiting here with Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com, Oklahoma State, then you mentioned the road games, Colorado, West Virginia, and then the KU State game on October 26th. In Manhattan. I got to ask you, Kansas just can't quite seem to get there. This is a strange year across college football. Jeff and I were talking. We make picks every year, and we pick against the point spread, and and there's 5 of us who do it, and we're all just below water trying to pick these games. It's just kind of crazy so far.
I think the transfer portal has had some interesting effects on college football. A lot of those players that were second or third string at the SEC have transferred out and spread out the wealth a little bit. They've come to realize, I went to this big school and I thought I was going to play a lot, and I'm not. I want to go someplace to play. So it's evening out the talent. But also, I think there's a factor of unpredictability. You can bring in some transfer portal guys, and they may not pan out. You might have adopted someone else's problems with the player, and it kind of lessens your own team. Maybe it hurts the locker room. So I think the portal's doing a lot of this. But also, I think there's been enough upsets now where teams just believe. They're not fearless going into places. If it's Bowling Green, pushing A&M and College Station or anything else, it's just been a chaotic year, and I think it's good for football and proves why the theory of a super conference doesn't make much sense if these schools are having problems beating not even Power 4 teams. They struggle right now with some teams that aren't even near the Power 4, and I think it proves the Power Conference idea. The one giant conference is kind of silly.
And we were talking before we started with your interview, about we were trying to figure out the 3 greatest college football programs in history. And, of course, I like putting people on the spot. So who would they be in your opinion, Fitz?
I'd probably go that is really good. Notre Dame, Michigan, and I might go to Nebraska. That shows how far they've fallen, and I think Oklahoma is teetering on the brink of following Nebraska, where they went from being a feared and dominant program in one conference to just another team in another conference, and they may not get the respect, they may not get the breaks, they might not get the right calls, to be blunt. And I think Oklahoma has kind of found themselves in that position really quick with a really tough schedule.
Yeah, I can see that. I had Alabama, Ohio State, and Oklahoma as my 3. Jeff didn't really have 3.
I just knew Oklahoma wasn't in it, and Notre Dame was. And Alabama.
Yeah, Alabama, I guess there was such a long stretch in there, when they had Shula coaching and when they were just not good.
Gene Stallings.
Oh, God, the Gene Stallings era. I'm surprised I don't have a statue of him. There was just some years that were a mess, and look, they've hit gold twice with 2 coaches that are 2 of the absolute best of all time.
All right, always a pleasure. K-State at home Saturday, 11:00 kick against Oklahoma State. KFH, of course, your home for K-State athletics. Tim, thanks.
Thanks, boys. Great to hear from you.